All right, good afternoon, and great to be back at Yishou University. Have I met any of you before? Has anyone seen my face before? Excellent, yes. I'm known by one person. Okay, good. All right, so let me just introduce myself briefly. That's my family. So it's me, my wife, and my two kids. So my daughter, she's 8 years old. That was her birthday, I think. And my son is 7 months old. So they are both 土生土长高雄人. And my wife and I, we met in Beijing when I was there teaching. And we came back to Taiwan in 2014. And so both my children were born here. I won't go into too much detail, but just to introduce what we are talking about today. So, stress. Anyone feel stressed right now? One person. Okay, one person is feeling stressed, so maybe one more. Anyone has been feeling stressed today, in the past 24 hours? Anyone? Okay, one or two people. All right, so it seems that the rest of you aren't particularly, bothered by stress. In which case, then you probably don't need to listen to the rest of what I'm saying. You can just take a nap. Okay, it's fine. Actually, maybe not. Professor Shaw will probably want you to actually pay attention. But don't worry. You can be daydreaming or something. But for those very few people, probably 5 of you, who do actually feel stressed at times, then, maybe what I'm about to say will be of help to you. I hope. So, for those of you who feel stressed, what are some of your current stresses? What are things that you feel stressed about? Homework? What you're going to do when you graduate? What kind of work? Maybe stressed about deadlines? Stressed about what's happening in the world, job prospects, maybe stressed about family relations, or maybe friendships. I'm not sure, but anyway, I think at different times we probably all do feel stressed. So here's a question: do you see stress as your friend or as your enemy? Do you see stress as your friend or as your enemy? Well, let's have a look at some studies. So there's one study that tracked 30,000 adults in the US for 8 years. So it's a pretty large study of 30,000 adults in the US for a total of 8 years. And it asked this question. It asked, how much stress have you experienced in the last year? So how much stress you've experienced? And then the second question, do you believe that stress is harmful for your health? So not just how much stress have you experienced, but also, do you see stress as being harmful for your health? And this is the result. So those who felt high stress and who believe that stress is harmful had a 43% increased risk of dying. So if you're feeling really stressed, and also if you feel that stress is really bad for you, then you have almost 50% extra chance of dying in the next year. But for those who experience high stress and who believe that stress is not harmful, for them, then actually they had, interestingly, the lowest risk of stress. So it wasn't stress that was the problem. It was how they perceived, how they saw stress that made all the difference. Because look, in both cases, it was high stress. But for those who had high stress and believed stress was harmful, then it was actually dangerous for them. Whereas for those who had high stress and believed stress is not harmful, actually they had the lowest risk of dying. And overall, over 8 years, estimated that 182,000 Americans died prematurely from the belief that stress is bad. So simply by believing that stress is bad for you, kills you. So, so what is stress? I mean, is it friend or is it an enemy? Is stress good for you or is it bad for you? Well, that actually depends. So first, what is stress? One definition is stress is a mental or emotional strain or tension resulting from adverse or demanding circumstances. All right, so, I guess that gives some idea of what stress is. It could be it's mental, emotional, and it results from adverse or demanding circumstances. But firstly, when does stress actually start? When do we start experiencing stress? Here's the answer. Then. That's my son. That was when he was probably about 2 days old. He doesn't look very stressed there, but believe me, that was when he wasn't feeling stressed. But as soon as he entered into the world, he began to feel stressed. Because when you are a baby and you are in your mother's womb, actually you feel very peaceful. It's warm, you're safe, and you have everything you need. As soon as you are born, then it's noisy, there are bright lights, and everything is different. And it becomes very stressful. That's why babies cry, right? They feel stressed. So, that's when really we call him Little Seven, Xiao Qi. Do you know why? Because he's 7 years younger than his sister. So there you go. Good way for us to remember. Like, how old are you? Oh yeah, you're 7 years younger than your sister. That's when he first started feeling stressed. And just to clarify a couple of terms to help us. So there's a difference between the word distress and the word eustress. All right, so distress, what is it? It's a negative, destructive aspect of stress. So stress itself, is just, you could say, a neutral term. Stress is just what you feel, let's say, if you have 10 kilograms on your back. But distress is when stress becomes negative. But then there's also something called eustress. What is eustress? Eustress is a positive form of stress which produces positive feelings of excitement, fulfillment, meaning, and satisfaction. So you actually feel stress in a positive way. One good example would be when you do something like this. So, who does these things? Who jumps off a building, that is maybe 100 meters high? Or goes rock climbing when you're pretty much upside down, right? Extreme sports actually create a huge level of stress. Why do you ride your motorbike? Too fast. Because it creates what's called a eustress. A feeling of excitement, a feeling of being alive. The adrenaline is pumping in your body. And actually that gives a sense of purpose and meaning, which if you never had it, life would actually be pretty dull and boring. So they are doing this for positive eustress. But what causes stress? What are things that cause stress in our lives? Well, anything that might be physiological, psychological, environmental, event, or combination of that initiates a stress response. So anything that causes your body to respond in a way that it considers to be stress. So you put like a few bricks on your head and you actually feel stress. But why would you want to do that? Might determine whether it's positive stress or negative. So actually for different people, then we have very different stress levels and what we consider to be stressful. So personality traits and learned thought patterns causes people to experience stress very differently. So one example is introverts and extroverts. Introverts, they like more being by themselves, whereas extroverts like being with other people. Me, I'm an introvert. So actually for me, then being with lots of people is actually quite stressful. I need to like build up my level of excitement and enthusiasm before going to a party. Because if there are lots of people there, then I'll actually be feeling nervous, feeling anxious, and feeling stressed. But then for extroverts, what do they love to do? They love to be with people. They love to be with people most of the time. Because being with people for an extrovert then is a way in which they feel charged up. They feel excited, they feel energized by being with people. Whereas for introverts then, probably you prefer just to sit by yourself in a coffee shop, which is what I was doing all morning today. So what are some contemporary stresses? Well, firstly, physical. So it could be, pathogens, just sickness. It could be a lack of sleep. That's definitely something which parents experience a lot when their children are small. It could be injury. If you get knocked off your bike. It could be drugs, smoking. Sedentary lifestyle is when you basically spend all your time sitting down or just not moving much. That can actually be stressful. Then there's emotional. Emotional stresses might include unexpressed anger. So if you're really angry about something, and you have no way in which you actually express that anger, but you just kind of like try to suppress it, that can be very stressful. Or lack of affection. If you feel really lonely, or maybe growing up, if your parents did not express much affection to you, that's stressful. Or it could be poor self-esteem. If you don't actually feel you are worthy. If your primary caregivers, especially your parents, if they look down upon you, or if they told you that you were useless, well, that can actually be very stressful. And then there are social factors as well. It might be embarrassment. If you do really poorly, if people laugh at you. Rejection. If people don't accept you, into their friendship circle. Could be teasing. Arguments. Actually for me, then arguments get very stressful. I hate getting into an argument with someone. That's why I try to avoid saying anything that might actually get me into trouble. Or it might be ridicule, or lack of social interaction. So that's the problem. You might be afraid of being with people, but at the same time, you're also often afraid of not being with people. So actually both can be stressful. And then there's spiritual as well. That concerns your values or your moral. Guilt, if you've done something wrong and you know it, that can be very stressful. Or moral conflicts, when you have to choose between right and wrong, or maybe you have to choose between wrong and wrong. So you don't have any good options. That can be very stressful. Lack of purpose. If you don't really know, why are you doing what you are doing? Why am I here? Why am I a student? What do I want to do in life? That kind of question can be very stressful for you. Or maybe lack of belief. You don't actually know, what really is most important. You don't really know, what are your values? What are your morals? All these things can be stresses in today's society. And then there's intellectual as well. So intellectual might be a mental fatigue, having too much work. If your professors, give you too much work to do, that can be very stressful. Overload. Or frustration. If you can't understand what the teacher is talking about. You can't understand what the book, the writer is saying. And then there's a mental stagnation. That's kind of almost the opposite. It's like, if you don't have anything to think about, if you aren't doing any studies for like a week or a month, that can actually be stressful. So too much work is bad. Actually, too little work is also bad. And then there's environmental, too much noise. I think that's one thing about Asia. Asia is so much more noisier than, say, Europe. And that's one thing about, when I go back to England. So I was in England last year. That's where my mum is. And one thing I noticed about most of England It's just how few people there are. There are sheep everywhere, but not many people in many places. And then it's so quiet. Go to sleep at night, and there's no noise. And I'm like, wow, why is this place so silent? There's absolutely no noise, no motorbikes. So anyway, whereas in Asia, like in Taiwan, then it's just almost noise everywhere. Overcrowding, poverty, and climate can also be stressful as well. Then there's occupational. When you have a negative relationship with co-workers or with your superior, especially. Maybe it's deadline pressure. You have to get the work done, the assignment done within a day. Or working overtime, having to work until like 7, 8, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. Or maybe difficulty balancing work and life because you spend all your time working and you don't have time for doing anything else. And then there's gender-related stresses. So for this, then women are more likely to report high levels of stress than men. I mean, I don't know whether actually women are more stressed than men, but they just report to be more stressful. Social and cultural expectations around caregiving contributes to women's stress. So usually it's the woman who has to take care of the family in terms of like take care of the children. That can be very stressful. And then there's discrimination and sexual harassment, which are unique stresses for women. So for women then, there are actually factors which contribute to their stress, which men don't have to experience. And then, on the other hand, men are more likely to experience stress related to work and financial pressures. So for me as a husband, as a father, then I feel more stress when it comes to my work and also financially providing my family, making sure that there's enough to buy food. And then men are less likely to seek help for stress due to social norms around masculinity. So for example, my wife and I were taking part in this couples group. And the women would be all talking about all the problems that they had. They'd be quite happy talking about all the problems that they faced as moms and as wives. But for the men, we would just like sit there and say, how's it going? Good. And you? Good. And you? Not bad. And you? The same. The women could talk for like hours, talking about all the problems with their husbands, with their kids, and the men would just be like, yeah, fine. That's it. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Men just don't talk about their problems. Certainly not to other men anyway. And then there's cross-cultural. So cross-cultural, especially in terms of cultural shock. All right, so what is it? It's the feeling of disorientation experienced by someone when they are suddenly subjected to an unfamiliar culture, way of life, or set of attitudes. So when you all of a sudden experience a different culture, a new culture, that might happen. When do we experience culture shock? When a monocultural society encountering cultural diversity. So for example, in Taiwan, then when someone from another culture comes to Taiwan, then there might be culture shock in terms of all of a sudden you are confronted with someone from Indonesia, or from Philippines, or from India, and you feel that hey, you're different. There might be culture shock that way. Or number two, going from one culture to another. So the person who actually comes here, or you go to Japan to study, and you go to America to work. So that's when you could well feel culture shock. So there are 5 stages of culture shock for those who are considering going to a different country, going to a different culture. Number 1 is the honeymoon stage. Honeymoon stage is when everything is new and wonderful. It's exciting. It's like, wow, it's beautiful. And the food, it's like, wow, it's just really interesting tasting the different kind of foods. Then there's a frustration stage. That's when you feel dissatisfaction and discomfort. That's when things start feeling really foreign, and you're like wondering, why am I here? I don't like the food. I don't like the weather. I don't like the way in which people do things. Then number 3, there's the adjustment stage. This is when things start to become more familiar, when you are used to the way in which people behave, and in terms of the daily life where you are. And then number four is the acceptance stage. Acceptance stage is when you start to accept and adopt local customs and practices. It's when you start to become like the locals. You start to live and act and behave the way in which locals in that new culture might behave. But then lastly, there's what's called reverse culture shock. This is when you go back to your native culture. For example, you come back to Taiwan and you realize that actually things are different. You've become used to the foreign culture so that you're no longer used to Taiwanese culture. Okay, this is a diagram that gives you an idea. So kind of time in a foreign country, horizontal axis, and then level of comfort and satisfaction, vertical axis. So at first, you have a honeymoon stage where you feel like, wow, everything is new, everything is beautiful, etc. And then it kind of goes down, like rejection stage. This is when you don't feel like you belong. But then there's the adjustment stage. This is when you start to get used to things. Then the acceptance stage, you're feeling much happier, you're used to being here, and then reverse culture shock. All right, so just an example of what I've just been talking about. Anyone guess what this is? My daughter, my son. We're actually looking at, oh, sorry, I jumped. Go back. Okay, so that's me when I was a kid. That's Taiwan, when there were actually a lot of fields. Okay, I was quite a cute little baby. At least I think so. At least my mom thinks so. Yeah. I grew up, first 13 years in Taiwan. Went to a sort of typical Taiwanese primary school. These were some of my friends, and then I went back to England when I was 13. So because I was born in England, I forgot to introduce my parents. My mother's English, my father's Taiwanese. So that's why I'm confused. And so I went back to England when I was 13 and went to this school here. It's a boarding school, so you live at school. And has anyone watched Harry Potter? Yeah. You guys watch Harry Potter? Okay, so basically a boarding school in England is like Harry Potter without the magic. Yeah, so if you imagine that, all right? So that's the kind of school I went to. There was culture shock. So first was a honeymoon stage. I went to England and I felt, wow, this place is great. There are no mosquitoes, it's cool, it's dry, and it was in the summer, so the days were really long. It didn't get dark until 10 p.m. But then, number two was the frustration stage. This is when, autumn sets in. And most of the time in England, in the autumn and the winter, it's cold, it's wet. The days are short. In the winter, it starts getting dark at 3:30 in the afternoon. And then the food is terrible. And plus then, there's bullying as well. So that's a honeymoon stage. So that's an English breakfast. So kind of like, that's what I felt, English food. Every morning you wake up and you have a really good breakfast during this honeymoon stage. But then pretty soon you realize that actually typical English food looks more like that. So I'm not joking. I mean, the school I went to, the food most of the time didn't look like that. Okay, so you're like, okay, what am I doing here? Why am I, even in this country? But then there's an adjustment stage. This is when you start coping. You start coping with things like being bullied. How did you cope? How did I cope? The form of bullying would be that the older students would hit the younger students, just purely for fun, right? Because we didn't have a punching bag, in our dorm, and so the older students would see the younger students and, excellent, let me try out my punch, like that, okay? And you're like, ooh, oh, that really hurt. Okay, but then after a while, you get hit enough times that you don't actually feel the pain. You get used to being hit. And so, that's the adjustment stage. There you go. And then I realized that actually in the UK, the food is pretty bad except the desserts. You know, the sweet desserts are actually really good. So the way in which you adjust is just eat more dessert. You know? So it's like, okay, yeah, the food is terrible, but you just like have 2 pieces of pie, you know, or 3 scoops of ice cream. And then lastly, it's the acceptance stage. You know, this is when you start becoming like a local. You know? So in Taiwan, what do people do when the sun comes out? You know, you keep in the shade, right? Or you take out an umbrella, right? I mean, only Taiwanese people do it. You know, it's bright sunshine and you have your umbrella. How in England? You know what happens when the sun comes out in England? People take their clothes off and lie upon the grass. All right. So, I mean, honestly, you know, I was back in England in the summer, and like on the grass, there are all these people like with swimming trunks, bikini, you know, lying on the sun, lying under the sun, right? So that's what I began to do as well. You know, that's why I started getting a bit dark. And then you start to dress, you enjoy dressing smart because English people love their ties. I don't know why, they just love wearing ties. You know, so I started to enjoy wearing a tie. You know? And then you talk politely about the weather. And because the weather's changing all the time, so you're like, oh yeah, you know, bright sunshine today, isn't it a glorious day? You know, this kind of thing. Because there's nothing else to talk about, so you talk about the weather. So I started to enjoy doing that. All right, so we need to talk about stress reduction and management. So what do we do about stress? Well, let me ask you the question. All right, so anyone guess? You know, how heavy is this oil? You know, would you say it's heavy or not? No, it's not really heavy, right? I mean, I could probably quite easily just hold it here for a minute. Yeah, do you think I could? Shall we try? I'll just like hold it here for a minute, all right? Anyone counting? Yeah, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, that's 4. Anyway, so let's just assume that I can hold it here for a minute, right? But do you think I could hold it here for an hour? Maybe. You know, to be honest, I think probably I'll be struggling like that after about 10 minutes. I'll be like, no, please, let me put it down. Okay. I think honestly, I could hold it for a minute, but I could not hold it for an hour. You know, after about 10, 15 minutes, I'll be like, okay. So anyway, what's the point? My point is this. This is a stress cycle. This is what happens to us when we are stressed, right? So you have stress, and then as a result of stress, you start feeling tired, and then you need recovery time. But then after a time of recovery, your new ability to withstand stress goes up, right? And so then you can have more stress, and then, you know, your strength, your stamina, it goes down, your energy level goes down, and then you start recovering, and then you gain new ability to withstand more stress. So, I mean, it's like this, right? So anyone done weight training before? So what happens is that at first you can only do a few times, right? And then your arms are like, oh, so tired. Okay, I'm dying, right? And then you rest for maybe a day or two. And then you do it again, right? And then you rest a couple of days. And then you keep on doing it. And what happens? So by having rest after stress, then you gain a new ability, you know, to be able to withstand more stress. You know, your muscles start getting bigger. You know, that's not me, okay? Not me, right? You probably guessed. So as a result of you know, stress and then rest, stress and rest, then you get stronger. You know, and that's why, you know, weight trainers are able to, you know, build muscle and gain strength. But the key is this: you can't be constantly under stress, right? You have to rest. You can't be constantly under stress. Otherwise, just like this bottle, you know, if I keep on holding it like this for an hour, you know, my arms will be dead. But if I just like sort of like hold it and then rest, and I hold it again and then rest, you know, I could keep on going. So that's the same for us as well. All right, so the key is this. The key is we need to be able to deal with our stress. You know, if you feel stressed, you know, an exam coming up, you know, an important assignment, or maybe a difficult conversation with a friend or boyfriend or something, you know, what do you do? What do you do with stress? Well, these are a few like bad ways in which to deal with it. So let's talk about the bad before we talk about the good. So number one, you know, bad habit, smoking. You know, so that's how some people deal with stress, and it can be relaxing, but it causes a lot more long-term problems. So these are all things that will help you deal with stress immediately in the short term. But they are bad because they cause you longer-term problems later. Bad habit number two, too much caffeine, drinking too much coffee. You know, drinking too much coffee actually, as a result, then you become dependent on the coffee, and then actually it lowers your energy level. And then number three, drinking in excess. You know, you drink too much beer or wine or whiskey. It might be relaxing in the moment, but the next day, actually, you might feel awful. Well, number four, you know, emotional eating. You know, so you eat because you are stressed. That's actually a really bad way of eating. You know, because the chances are is that you'll eat really badly, you'll put on weight, and it'll just be, you know, bad for your body. Or compulsive spending. You know, you're stressed, and so you go to the 一大世界, right? But that's the thing, you probably buy lots of things that you don't need. Or number six, you know, too much social media. You know, you're stressed, and so you start talking to your friends, but sometimes actually that becomes more stressful. So, what are good ways to deal with stress? Well, here are a few suggestions. So first is physical. You know, recreational activities. You know, find things that get you to move. You know, get you to, you know, enjoy the thing that you're actually doing. So instead of, you know, focusing on the stress, you focus on, say, the ball, you know, or on the game. You know, laugh. You know, there's a silly thing which you can try to do, which is just to make yourself smile. And it's actually been proven. You know, if you make yourself smile, even if it's not funny, even if you don't feel like smiling, it actually relieves stress. You know, so one way in which you can do it is just to get a pen or a pencil or something and okay, you know, because this way it forces your mouth to make a smile. You know, so if you don't believe me, you can go back home and try it. I mean, you can even try it now. Okay, so you know, why don't you if you don't know what to do, you know, just put a pen between your mouth. And honestly, you know, after about like a minute, you actually feel less stressed. You know, okay, if you don't want to do it now, you can do it when you go home, right? But you know, laughter is actually the best. Laughter is one of the best medicines. Or journal, right? No, not 杂志. Okay, 日记. Okay. Anyway, so journal. So write about your experiences, especially negative experiences. It's actually a very good way for you to process it. Exercise. You know, exercise. What does it do? It decreases stress hormones, and it increases endorphins. Endorphins are chemicals in your body that make you happy. Right? So they are like a happy drug that your body produces. You know, you don't have to inject it. It's amazing. You know, so exercise creates endorphins that make you happy. You know, so who wouldn't want to do it? 30 minutes a day is a great way to increase endorphins and decrease the stress hormones in your body. All right, then do volunteer work. You know, help other people. Why? Because by helping other people, actually, it gives you a sense of purpose. You know, it makes you feel that you are actually worth something. Especially if you feel that you know, life is meaningful and you have no direction in life. Then actually, by helping other people, it gives you a sense of direction, it gives you a sense of fulfillment. You know, you feel valued, which is all really, really good to deal with stress. And you know, set realistic goals for yourself. You know, that was actually my problem for many years, because I wanted, you know, to try to be you know, better than the next person next to me. I was always comparing myself to other people, and so then I wanted to be better than them. But then when I failed to be better than others, I felt really discouraged, and so that becomes really stressful. My brother was mainly, you know, the person who I compared myself to. And the problem there is my brother, he was like the best student in the school. And so I went to England, I went to the school, and everyone asked me, are you as smart as your brother? I said no. And it's true, yeah. So set realistic goals. Don't try to be someone else. Just try to be the best that you can be. And then diet, fruit, vegetable, fiber, all things that a healthy diet actually is the best way for you to decrease stress. A bad diet, like junk food, it gives you a sense of comfort for the short term. Long term, does the opposite. All right, then social and emotional. Resolve conflict. If you have a conflict with someone else, your family member, your friend, a teacher or something, it actually creates a lot of stress. So if necessary, confess, say, I was wrong, I'm sorry, right? Or forgive the other person. If someone wronged you, by forgiving them, actually, that's the best way for you to let go of stress. If you hold a grudge, if you feel angry against someone else, that's just stress that harms you, that's toxic. Avoid anger and the desire for revenge. Because anyone who is angry, anyone who wants revenge is not happy. Happiness and anger, happiness and a desire for revenge just do not go together. And again, don't compare. All right, then social and emotional. So generate goodwill. Why? How? By encouraging other people. Encourage other people. By encouraging someone else, actually, you also encourage yourself. And if you can encourage others, help other people to feel better, then they will also create a climate that helps you feel better as well. And always be thanking people. Thank people for what they've done. Because when you express gratitude, actually, just doing that helps you to feel more grateful. Say, thank you for helping me. Say thank you for what you said. All these things actually help you to be more thankful, which makes you happier. Then take control of your life. For example, get up early, go to bed early. Very hard for students to do, I know. And have a schedule. By taking control, by feeling that you are in control of your life, actually you feel a lot less stressful. So I intentionally came earlier today because I knew that if I arrived at the university at last minute, I would feel stressed as I drove over. So by getting somewhere early is a good way in which you don't feel stressed before you get there. All right, then spiritual. I think spiritual and emotional. First, prayer or meditation. Prayer is just a way in which you can commit your worries, your burdens, things which you don't have control over, to God. So through prayer, then you can gain a sense that okay, I don't have to be in control of everything because there's one who can take control. Who can be taking care of me, so I don't have to take care of the world. Or through meditation. Meditation could be just simply focus on how you're feeling. Focus on the emotions that you're having. Just experience the here and now. Rather than thinking all the time, rather than processing, just be. Just experience. Often it goes with breathing. You're like, what are you talking about? Like breathing. Why do I need to be reminded to breathe? Well, that's the thing, because when you're stressed, then usually what happens is that you breathe really quickly. I don't know whether you notice this. Your heartbeat increases, and then your breath tends to be short. So instead, by taking a long breath, long deep breath, is a way in which you're telling your body that there's nothing to worry about. And so, by breathing deeply in and out, when you are feeling stressed, like before an exam or before something which is causing you to be stressed, is a great way for you to tell your body that, okay, there's no worry, there's nothing I should be anxious about, and so just, relax. Or go for a walk. This is one of my favorite ways of dealing with stress. I feel stressed, and so I just go for a like 10-20 minute walk. And I find that actually my perspective, my whole mood often has changed. Listening to music that actually relaxing, not music that makes you more depressed. Or create beauty. Whatever way in which you can create beauty. For me, I'm not an artist. So one way to create beauty might be just get a coloring book and then fill in the colors. That's what like kids like to do. But actually adults can do it as well. Or what's called positive thinking. I'm naturally very negative. I'm constantly sort of like seeing the worst in myself and in other people. But actually that actually doesn't help me to be more positive, to be more happy. So instead, then I started to change the way in which I thought about things. I started to see the good in the world. Start to see the good in my situation. And see the good in myself as well. So by seeing what's good, by seeing the world through a positive lens rather than a negative one, helps you to be happier and reduces stress. And lastly, practice gratitude. So you do this by making a list. Oftentimes what I do is that at the end of a year or after a significant, important event in my life, I make a list of all the things I'm thankful for. All the things that I'm grateful for. So like 2022, what am I thankful for in the year 2022? And then I find that as I write all the things which I'm thankful for this past year, my happiness level just increases, and I feel like, wow, actually my life is so much better than I thought it was. Simply just by writing about the positive things. All right, this is a quote from Jesus, which I personally find helpful. He says, "That is why I tell you not to worry about everyday life, whether you have enough food and drink or enough clothes to wear. Isn't life more than food and your body more than clothing? Look at the birds. They don't plant or harvest or store food in barns, for your heavenly Father feeds them. And aren't you far more valuable to Him than they are? Can all your worries add a single moment to your life?" And that's the thing. Worrying doesn't help, especially worrying about things which you don't have the ability to deal with. So usually we worry about things which we can't control. It doesn't help. Instead, we should just do what we can do and just, leave the rest. Final tips, 7 tips, for managing stress. So just very quickly, just in the last few minutes. All right, number one, just admit that you're stressed. So sometimes you just have to be aware that you are stressed. Right, before an exam, when you can't do your assignment, just like, okay, I'm stressed right now. And so therefore, that's the time when you need to think, okay, what can I do to help myself in my current situation? And number 2 is prioritize. What's most important? Sometimes so many things which you need to be doing, that's making you stressed. You have like 5 really important things for today. Well, in that case, just prioritize. What's most important? And do that first thing that's most important. And then you'll feel a lot less stressed to then do the rest. Right? Number 3, learn to let go. Oftentimes we worry about everything, but there are only a certain number of things which you are able to do and which we should be worried about. So the rest, just let them go. The world will continue even without you. So don't consider yourself so important that you have to save the world, or even just save your family and friends and everyone around you. Because the truth is that the best way in which you can help other people is if you yourself are able to cope with your own problems. Then you have the ability to help others cope with theirs. So if you're too stressed, then you can't help anyone else, and actually you become a burden to other people. All right, number 4, take time for yourself. Sometimes we just need to de-stress. Again, if you're constantly under stress, if you're constantly like, holding this bottle up, you have too many things that are pressing you down, you're going to break. And so if instead, then you're like, okay, I need to take a break now. Maybe just like 10 minutes. Take that time. And number 5, time you enjoy wasting is not wasted. Sometimes we just need to enjoy wasting time. Because if you're enjoying it, then it's not wasting. And don't waste too much time, right? Yeah. But maybe just like an hour when you have done the things that you need to do, or the most important things, then maybe just like spend a bit of time, enjoy yourself. That's getting the rest in order then that you can come back and do better. And number 6, regard stress as your friend. You're going back to our definition of stress and distress and eustress. Distress is bad, destructive stress. Eustress is positive. It gives you a sense of being alive. So, we need stress in our lives. Otherwise, life will feel meaningless. But then that's the thing. See the good stress and see the things that cause stress in your lives actually to be a positive thing if you can deal with it wisely. And lastly, recognize when you need help. Maybe you need counseling. Maybe a friend, professional help. Sometimes we are under more than we can deal with. That's when we need to find others to help us. So, remember, you can manage it. So, just never give up, even if you're that fraud. All right, thank you very much. Yeah.